What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. It's been a while, Dave. It's been a while because you've been out of the country, man. Welcome back. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, man. Had my head in the clouds on an airplane while listening to the new 88 Rising album, Head in the Clouds too. So no days off, even when you're on vacation. How's it going?
We're gonna be talking that new album and a lot of TV slash, I guess, a TV movie today. But before we jump into it, hit that subscribe if you're on YouTube and go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to listen to the pod all the ways. Also, go on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at nostalgiapod, where we post about things we don't talk about here on the podcast. As you alluded to, Dave, 88 Rising, Head in the Clouds 2. So 88 Rising is a group we I think have been very high on since their last album, their 2 albums ago. When how many have we reviewed so far?
One label album last year,
Mm-hmm.
but before that we were talking about Rich Brian and then Joji and then Higher
And
Brothers,
Joji.
acts on the label. So we've reviewed a fair amount of the recent output from the label. And that's because we generally seem to like what they do. So I'm happy to keep talking about them.
Yeah, and 88 Rising, obviously the artist we mentioned, they're an Asian collective, Asian label, and they've been putting out some really quality stuff. And Head in the Clouds too, I think, continues that mold. However, one of the things I really liked about their first album was it was very varied. There was a lot of different tempo, sounds, just energies coming from it. And listening to Head in the Clouds too, it seemed like this was basically the chill pop version of 88 Rising for the most part. How did you feel about this follow-up to Head in the Clouds?
Yeah, I found it pretty striking that this is sonically a continuation of the pivot Rich Brian did earlier this year on The Sailor, where there's a lot more alt pop, a lot more singing from a guy who came up as a rapper, and then everyone else is kind of filling in, making similar music. Obviously, that's the kind of music Joji's been making this whole time, and some of the I think feature players on the label, like Nikki, seem to really shine because they're given a lot to do this time around. And I think Higher Brothers more fold in this time, just kind of melting into the background and all that. But they also did acquit themselves well on Midsummer Madness, which is a bit of a pop hit from the first label album last year. So I'm surprised that they really committed to this whole direction, but I also can't blame them because I think it really works. So it's and then when they do actually go to more traditional hip hop from the rappers in the group, it is even more striking because it's just less frequent this time around. But I liked it overall.
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that Rich Brian and Joji had this label and have a lot of say in the direction that things go. Especially the songs where Joji like sings on it. It really seemed to stand out that he had his fingerprints on those songs. And just kind of scrolling through, I see Rich Brian here on like 2, 4, 5 songs maybe in total. But his presence felt like it was there throughout. And I agree. I think it works really well, even though it does feel a little samey in terms of energy for a lot of the album. I think it's all really quality. And, like a song like Indigo with Nikki, who you talked about, seems to be a track that I think you can point to where there's this definite like direction that this album was going. And maybe they wanted to make it more in line with the title. They made it this kind of like, I don't know, cruising in the clouds, like just kind of like chilling, hanging out type vibe. But Nikki brings it throughout this album whenever she pops up. And I really can't say enough good about this label because I feel like not only are they representing, a bunch of really talented artists, but they also seem to have a vision when they're all working together and they're making a collective album seem pretty cohesive, which is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's some be some high profile guests this time around too. There wasn't really that many guests on the last one. You got the first track, These Nights, which I think really sets the tone for the songs we were talking about, features Chung Ha, who's a really huge K-pop artist. That's quite the collab, to be honest. You know, Rich Brian kind of legitimizing himself over on the Asian side of things, because yes, he's from Indonesia, but he did not really have a career in Asia. He blew up here in the States. So that is kind of cool to see. Also, Goldlink on Tequila Sunrise, I think, kind of continuing what we heard from Goldlink on his album earlier this year, Diaspora, just kind of showing that he can fit on more dancey stuff despite being a really technical rapper. That was really cool. And then Sway Lee just kind of playing the hits on Walking, just doing the the recent Drake collab song, Unforgettable, Swaycation, all the R&B sway that we've come to know from him. And I think all these features work pretty well, but even lesser known people like Barney Bones, I think actually has some decent spots later on in the album as well. So there's just a lot of clear artistic intent with this album, both these strategic features and then just really honing in on the sound of the label. They've done tours, I think 1 or 2 tours, and they have the 88 Rising Festival they've been doing in LA. And it's just really cool that even though they're not really a group or a collective, they're really just all signed together and have the Asian identity that they all have in common. They all seem to be on the same page, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. What were the standout tracks for you?
I really like These Nights, Tequila Sunrise. You mentioned Indigo with Nicki. I thought she really crushed that. And then Hopscotch right after Indigo, just because that's just like a fucking trap banger. And you don't expect to hear one of those when you listen to the first 9 tracks. And it's also a good trap banger. That song hits. Yeah.
I also really liked I Just Use Music Again, which I think will probably be a song you hear a lot of EDM artists flip or sample or remix. Also, I Love You 3000, just a nice little shout out to the Avengers and Iron Man there. So appreciated that. But yeah, 88 Rising, check them out. We're going to put 1 or 2 songs onto our Nowstalgia Best of 2019 playlist. And we're going to move on to a TV show, which if you haven't checked out yet, we don't know what you're doing. So Mr. Robot, season 4 premiere. Dave, Elliot's back, man. But the premiere sets the stakes pretty quickly with a high-profile character death right in the opening scene.
Yeah, the continuation of the last scene that character was in at the end of season 3, of course, which was way back in December 2017, I believe it was. Was it December? Yeah, it's almost 2 years ago. Did not expect that coming, but once they have it happen, and right before there's the lead up, obviously we're talking about Angela Moss, Porch Doubleday, gets killed by the Dark Army, and when Price is like, I wish you wouldn't have said that, it takes another minute and a half for her to get got. And there's it just kind of creates this tension. Are they really going to kill Angela right now? And yes, they do. And they haven't shied away from killing characters before, but she would be the most high profile one to date, right?
For sure.
I think so. Yeah. Reflecting on it, I think her character probably served its purpose narratively. I'm not really sure where we could have continued to take her. Then again, Mr. Robot, it's really tough to predict any of the plot. So I'm sure Sam could have thought of something. But unexpected on my end, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think Angela kind of served as a beacon of hope, I think, for all the characters, especially her relationship with Elliot. There was an underlying romance or affection there between them, but also just this idea that this was a person who Elliot, I think, found some redemption in and some real connection with in this world. And the first season very much about self-discovery and connection and feeling isolated while also kind of navigating this topsy-turvy hacker world that you're in. But then season 3 really, I think, started to move towards this is a tragedy. This story is going to be not going to end well
Right.
for many of the characters. And Angela dying in the opening scene, I think, sets the tone for the season. That while I think there's still going to be a lot of high moments for Elliot throughout the season and Mr. Robot and Darlene, but I think in the end we know that most of them are probably moving towards not a great ending. So overall, I really liked the first episode, and second episode in a way I think brings in a little bit more of that human element, you know, where Elliot and Darlene are talking about their dealing with their mother's death and how that impacts them and their relationship. You start to see some of like the paranoia playing out in with Elliot and like his focus and his battle with Mr. Robot. So there's a lot of the old themes kind of playing out there and coming back into this. But yeah, really impressive start to season 4. With the premiere, what did you think of the whole like Elliot hacking the lawyer and basically being like this, like, I don't know, escape scene for 20 minutes?
Oh yeah, I thought that was great. Just watching this whole extended chase, I guess. Yeah, in Grand Central of all places. You know, we know the show takes place in New York City. It's never shied away from that. It's always looked good as a New York setting. But I was just thinking, like, how the fuck did you film this in Grand Central? That place never dies. Like, did you do that shit at like 4 a.m? Or all those extras show up? Like, you can't close that place down. How the hell did they shoot that? I have no idea. But it looked really cool and maintained the tension because, you know, I think they've established that Elliot, a lot of times he's gotten this far more due to chance and luck.
Mm-hmm.
And not that he's never come across like a superhero. So they show once again that, yeah, he could not protect that dude he was trying to blackmail at all.
Right.
And sure enough, in the end, later in the episode, he couldn't really protect himself, you know? And I like that they do that with Elliot because he's so brilliant as a hacker and because of with the Mr. Robot side to him, also quite the mastermind of sorts. I think it's important to try and ground the plot when you can. And I think that was a good way to do that, which again also looked great and had great tension. So, yeah, I think the Dark Army in general with White Rose is just such a tantalizing threat the whole time. You know, there's still a lot of mystery about them, what they want, what they how they do things, but really engaging whenever they're involved. So yeah, I love that shit.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned the end of episode 1 where the Dark Army has kidnapped Elliot and they're basically setting it up to look like an overdose and they're going to kill him. Shout out to Sam Esmail, who is the guy that injects him with the heroin for the overdose. And then it cuts to credits as Elliot sees his life flash before his eyes. And then the credits end pretty quickly. And what was it, Price or was it Esmail that like gave him the Narcan spray?
I think it was Esmail, and then Price said, welcome back.
Yeah.
So definitely putting the deck on the table move for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that scene was a great way to wrap up the first episode. And then the second episode starts giving you a lot of background onto who White Rose is. It gives you a little bit more of what his plan is and what he's going for, or she's going for. You know, the pronouns change depending on the identity White Rose is taking on at that time. But really interesting. I thought the montage was done really great. And more than anything, I think what we've appreciated about this show is not only is it a really intriguing plot, but it's shot beautifully. Esmail uses such unique camera framing and angles and lighting. It's just a pleasure to look at. And he does those montages so well. Like there's the one where I forgot where they're talking about like cheaters or something like that in society, and they're like cutting through all the people, and like I think they like showed Tom Brady at one point or something like that in there, and like that was from like a past season, but they just do a really good job of incorporating like recent events with like all these other pieces to it, and really creates a world. And Esmail's he's a master, man. So I'm here for season 4. Any predictions or anything you're looking forward to?
Oh, I have no
Hard to
way of
say.
predicting anything. It's really hard to say, but you know, Mr. Robot season 1 widely celebrated. Rami Malek revelation. That was back in 2015, right? And then season 2, a bit in the weeds and indulgent and lost a lot of people. And then it felt like season 3, which me and you loved and talked plenty about how much we did. The fanfare did not catch back up. So I'm really hoping that with Rami Malek's profile risen, and even Sam's, I guess, as well, following up Homecoming and all that. I really hope this show gets kind of the coverage it deserves for its final season, just because Sam deserves tons of credit, and he usually, people don't forget about this or anything, but like really influencing this auteur-driven TV wave we've had. And we've talked about like Cary Fukunawa is in the same boat there, and even if the plot is almost besides the point in certain instances, even though there's a lot of it, Sam's just whole presence with the whole every aspect of the show, down to the writing, the story, and as you mentioned, all the technical aspects of the filming, is just really uncommon in TV, even on like big prestige TV, even HBO TV. So it's I think it's just worth people's time, because you don't get this often. You should reward this type of this type of art on TV, to be honest. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see where the politics go, because this is probably one of the more political dramas we have on TV. Like, Sam has never shied away from his personal politics, but the show takes place in 2015, I believe.
Yep.
Like, it is explicitly dated. Yeah, explicitly dated in the past, but it's in like Trump's America, alternate take, obviously, and has not been afraid about commenting on things. Like Righteous Gemstones, for example, has taken a little bit of heat for not actually going after contemporary evangelicals, right? But whereas Mr. Robot really doesn't pull any punches with its dystopian politics. So I'm sure it's going to be a whirlwind of a season, and can't wait to see my boy Joey Badass come in.
Yep.
Leon, I know he was filming. He literally missed his Hot 97 interview promoting the Beast Coast album because he was filming the show. So yeah, I'm really stoked to see where this goes, because it's just a show that I think is just really special and got a little lost to time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hope I agree. I hope people catch back on to this, or if they haven't caught up, like get back into it, because I'm sad that this show is leaving. It's probably one of my favorites to follow. If nothing else, that it's just been a pleasure just to look at, and we're going to talk about Succession a little bit, where this the season finale of Succession, I think, had some of the best shots of the year in television. But Robot has 2 or 3 every year that you're just kind of like, wow, like how did they do that? Also, I'm interested to see how they reconcile the whole Robot Elliot thing, because even in the second episode, they talk a little bit about how Elliot feels like he's still shut out sometimes when Mr. Robot takes over, and how those two reconcile the inner workings of Elliot is going to be really interesting. So tune in if you haven't been, or catch up if you are behind, because Robot last season, worth it. We're going to talk about, as you just alluded to, Royal Gemstones season 1. We talked about the first episode, hour long, and then they moved to the half-hour episodes. After that was something we were a little bit skeptical about, and I'm glad that they did move to the half hour. Overall, I felt like this first season of Gemstones was a bit up and down. I felt like there were a couple episodes that were pretty forgettable, and then some moments and lines and things that happen that I think are going to be burned into my memory forever, in good ways and bad. But overall, I especially the second half of the season, I thought really picked up. The last like 3 or 4, I thought, like, I had no idea where it was going at any point. I thought they really hit their stride. How'd you feel about Gemstone season 1?
Yeah, I really quite enjoyed it. And we talked about with the premiere that they didn't really waste any time with the setup of, exploring the mystery, the blackmailing that the show leads up to, the twists are explored or told to the audience early on regarding the son being involved and the blackmailers meeting McBride and co in the first episode and really, really advancing the plot quickly. So I was happy they didn't get too bogged down, but ultimately you're not watching a Danny McBride and Jody Hill production for the plot mechanics. You're watching it for the hangs with, and you're just hanging out with like their past work, just assholes generally. I think that's just the best way to describe at least the characters McBride plays, and they're really good at doing that. It's just generally a good hang, funny time. And this time around, Righteous Gemstones, the window dressing is really, really rich because it's this aloof evangelical televangelist millionaire situation, right? And that in and of itself, I think, really can hit a lot of chords because it's based in reality here in the U.S. of that very phenomenon. And then having it just be totally lampooned is a good time. And then when you have Walton Goggins come in, again, a veteran of McBride and Hill shows with vice principals, having him come in and just throw 100 the whole time is hilarious. And then when you have like one-off moments like the flashback episode, and the misbehaving song, there's just a lot of I think a lot of funny things to kind of like grab onto with this show. And again, you're not looking to McBride and Hill for like grand statements. And as I said before, they shy away from any kind of judgment on evangelical Christians. But I think that's okay because ultimately it's just a really good time, and that's what we are watching for with these guys. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I don't mind a comedy that doesn't feel like it needs to be a philosophy show as well. Like it can just take a funny, ridiculous concept that allows them to, make fun of the lavishness and the exuberance that these people have and kind of make fools of them. And I'm okay with that. I think the person that stood out to me the most in this season was Edie Patterson.
Yeah.
She's great. Basically gets to play she basically just gets to play this very childish Arrested Development type
like a sycophant.
Middle-aged woman. Yeah, exactly. And her relationship with BJ was probably some of my favorite moments throughout the season. And BJ just himself was fucking hilarious. When he says he's edgy now and he got the earring, I think I was crying laughing on my couch. I thought that was so funny. Also the fact that they kept meeting in like Outback steakhouses to like talk about their relationship was just so ridiculous and funny to me.
Right.
But just overall, I thought each character got a lot of great moments. And the interesting piece for me was where I felt like the show really caught its stride was when Danny McBride got to not be so much of a dick. He's still a dick throughout, but when he actually got to have a relationship with his son and like be sincere and loving towards him, I felt like the show really shifted and took in a good way, and created a lot of underlying conflict and dynamics that really brought a lot more to the show than just him being Kenny Powers throughout the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree because I think they do a really good job of laying that groundwork to pay off in the future. And it's ultimately really satisfying. I don't think anything is overly surprising about where the story goes, but I think that's just okay when it's kind of orchestrated to this level of success.
Yeah, the one thing I did find surprising was when the stuntman comes to the house. I thought that was like super ballsy. I didn't expect that. And then when he's when what's his name, Jesse is looking at him, it's like, you know what? You look so familiar to me. He's like I played like serial killer on SVU for like a 3-episode arc. He's like, nah, I don't watch anything that I forgot what he said. I don't watch anything that involves solving crimes or something like that, or figuring shit out. I was like, that's fucking like so perfect for that character. Also, when Jesse calls all of his friends and their wives together to watch the video because he wants to feel absolved of all of his sins or whatever he said, that scene too was so hilarious. Not only like the two kids being there, the two kids of the dad who you get like you see his like tiny little dick, but also just like the reaction all of the guys had throughout was just like it was killing me. I really thought this show had a lot of good moments. And you mentioned Walton Goggins, who, man, I mean, I for someone that wasn't like a main character in the show right in the beginning and kind of comes in like 2 or 3 episodes later, I feel like he steals the show in a lot of ways. Like every scene with him, like you said, is electric. And I think especially Baby Billy is a character that people are going to remember at the end of the year when they talk about some of the characters of the year.
Oh yeah, and it's been renewed for season 2, so yeah. we'll be back. Looking forward to it.
Why don't we move on to Succession, number one boys. We talked about Succession's first episode, and Succession season 1. At the top of our end of year list last year. Just a real delight, a show that I think took a couple episodes to catch its stride, but once it did, it was just boom, 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 episode that was everybody was talking about. And that it seemed to reach another level this year. Season 1 seemed to be like, oh, this show's pretty interesting. There's a lot here. I think this can become something. And season 2 was like, okay, this is excellent television. This is something that's riveting. It's something people talk about. It's memeable. It hit basically everything you need for a television show to really become super uber popular. And I think it did, because pretty much Sunday nights when this show was on, all I saw was people on Twitter talking about this. And obviously Twitter is not necessarily a gauge for what's really popular, but I think the discussion around this show is evidence enough of how good it is. How did you feel about season 2?
Oh yeah, I love season 2. I think it was a clear step up for a show that already was so great. And season 1 we thought was under-nominated at the Emmys last month, still won for writing for Jesse Armstrong. Fully expecting season 2 with Thrones now gone, Veep now gone, expecting Succession to be HBO's golden goose at the Emmys.
The number one boy.
The number one boy. A lot of noms are coming for this show, and for good reason, because as you said, it kind of has the whole package. It's really funny. You can watch this show for the jokes, for the memes. No context Succession, phenomenal account. Yep. Would follow. But what I like most about the show, I think the strongest aspect of the show is ultimately the drama, the writing, and the plot mechanics, because it's so fulfilling, because it continues to just pay off of the journey we've been on since season 1. It's just all these people, which are all varying degrees of shitty, deplorable, and their relationships with each other and how generally badly they treat each other is just riveting stuff constantly. Yeah. And when there are moments of cringe or anxiety on the show, you really feel that shit. And season 2 just had episode after episode, set piece after set piece that you just like can't look away from, right? Yep. I'm just thinking of like Turnhaven, when we meet the Pierce family. I have that dinner scene.
Yep.
Later on, our Jestes at that like retreat scene, a retreat setting for all the business people. Yep. Later on, DC, where Tom is getting roasted alive in front of Congress. There's just so much here. And then we get Holly Hunter as Rhea Jarrell just coming in and just being another awesome presence on the show. There's just so much to like, and I really love where most of the characters got. There's definitely a big Shiv season. I think she was the biggest winner in terms of just like using screen time, getting a lot of it and all that. But a lot of Roman progression this season. Yes. Obviously, after the finale, a lot look forward to with Kendall. And even Tom, I think, is changing as well. And shout out the con heads with Connor,
Yeah.
Phenomenal stuff, man.
You didn't even mention Greg, who went from basically homeless at the beginning of the season to having like a super nice apartment. And
he's a boss now.
Yeah, he played a major role in the attempt to take Logan down that Kendall is trying to execute here, cutting off the head, so to speak. Yeah, for a show that it really boils down to the characters in the room. And I saw a tweet where it said Succession, what it does is it proves that if the writing is there, all you need for a television show to be interesting is good dialogue and characters in a room together. And it's true. Like, this show embodies that. And pretty much all it is people in a room. I think the only episode I can think about where that wasn't the case was where Kendall was stuck on Long Island trying to get back to undercut Logan and take control of the company in season 1. Constantly, this is just people sitting around talking, trying to make deals, trying to backstab each other, figure shit out. It's incredibly riveting, but they also go to such interesting destinations and such interesting situations that you talk about. I mean, you mentioned Turnhaven, you mentioned Argestes, is that, yeah.
Yep.
Argestes. But even like the Summer Palace to start the season off, with the 3 raccoons stuffed up the chimney.
Oh, right. Forgot.
And the last episode is on this huge yacht in Greece. Like,
right.
It's always really interesting, really beautiful. And you talk about all these characters stepping up. Shiv, obviously, I agree, is the MVP just in terms of how much she's leveled up and how much her will she, won't she become the CEO or the successor for Logan drove a lot of the plot. But I found Roman's character development to be by far the most interesting, because not only do you see him exploring like his issues with Jerry in a very sick and sadistic way, but then at the end of the season, you actually see him like talking about his like desire to like have real relationships with his siblings and be able to be vulnerable with them. And you see him wanting to be protective of Kendall when they talk about how he's going to take the hit, be the scolded sacrifice. It's really, really cool. And then, of course, you talk about Tom, who is basically a very passive person, and then finally stands up to Shiv at the end and is pretty open. And then I guess also kind of stands up to Logan by eating his chicken. I'm not sure what that was going for, but really, really just
he ate my chicken.
Just awesome stuff overall. Any like moments, shots, lines that really stand out to you?
Oh man, God, I mean, the show is a quote machine in general. We know they do lots of takes, they shoot lots of coverage, fair amount of improv. But I mean, yeah, Rome for sure has lots of cutting ass lines, usually just fucking breaking people down. But even like, I'm trying to think, like something like the shit like that Tom or Kendall would say to Greg, just like offhand, because they're used to being rich, unlike Greg. There's just so much funny shit, and I think what's good about the show is it never forgets to show you that these people are obnoxiously wealthy and don't know what it's like to be a real person. And a lot of times that this comes out in the dialogue, which makes for really funny or intriguing conversation,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the thing they do so well, is you still care about these characters even though they are all pieces of shit. I mean, Shiv, who probably is the most redeemable out of them all, tampered with a witness this season and pretty much convinced a victim of sexual abuse to not come forward. I mean, pretty evil shit. And you still
she also picked her dad over her husband.
Yep.
Which I guess kind of tracks given how she's treated Tom to this point. But, I mean, going in, I think just people just, trying to theorize like what is this plot of this show going to be. Season 1's all about Kendall trying to depose Logan. Is season 2 going to be about maybe someone else stepping up to do that, perhaps Shiv or Roman, right? And even though this was a big Shiv season, by the finale, it's back to Kendall. And Logan was so integral to season 2, truly a main character. He's not incapacitated for any of this, right? And I actually like really enjoyed Brian Cox's his presence on the show and in terms of how he affects everything. But the fact that they really upended everything by the end of the finale with Kendall truly and Greg just truly breaking off from the rest of the Royce and lighting a fire under them, knowing we have this fear of Kendall committing vehicular manslaughter at the end of season 1 in Logan's back pocket to be used in this moment. Now we know the show has truly progressed and gotten to a new point, and that's exciting. And you know, you mentioned how it's been appointment viewing the past 2 months in terms of people actually watching it week to week, and now they've found a way somehow to build incredible anticipation for the third season. It's truly masterful.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's going to take a leap forward, but at least in time, I had a couple months. But do you buy the theory that Shiv was in on this with Kendall?
There are lots of signs of Shiv and Kendall discussing things, and you know Shiv doesn't trust Logan after he basically strung her along for the CEO position, right? And used Rhea to kind of humiliate her. And we know that Kendall and Shiv have connected about this, but I'm not sure if that was just about Rhea's presence and not so much as big a picture with Logan. So I don't know. It's really compelling though, if there is some kind of this more like Shiv's the inside man for Kendall. That would be fascinating. But she doesn't know. She doesn't know about the manslaughter, you know? So yeah, it would be great if that was the case.
Yeah, because there's that scene at the beginning of the season where Kendall comes up to Shiv and just basically says, like, just take care of me, like, moving forward, like, pretty much, like, breaks down to her. And she's like, what the hell's going on? And I can imagine from there might have been this, like, unspoken agreement between them, maybe even blatantly spoken behind closed doors. But it would be cool to have something like that have gone on. I'm not sure if I totally buy it, only because this is a show where they've done a lot of showing, and this, the season finale is the first time they kind of didn't show all their cards until like the last moment. Kendall obviously had this up his sleeve, and as you kind of discuss, like, you can kind of see some of these things playing out in the last episode and coming to fruition. But I think the sleight of hand that they kind of pulled with the last scene leads me to believe that there probably isn't more, because if so, I think then it becomes like, how many back deals are we not seeing in the show? And that, right, I think that gets into shaky ground. So, and the writing's too good to do something like that too. Real quick before we wrap up on this, I want to shout out Arian Moayed, plays Stewie. He's great. Every time I see Stewie, he's a welcome presence, whether he's cleansing his palate with lavender or just sick burning Kendall over and over. I mean, just some ridiculous shit, but great presence on the show.
I also really enjoy Naomi Pierce.
Yeah.
Good foil, or actually not a foil, good companion to Kendall when she was around. Yeah. A lot of good guests, and we'll probably hopefully get more Stewie in season 3. He really was not in this season too much.
No. Looking forward to season 3. I'm hopefully back next year. Do we know that for a fact?
I don't know if 2020 is confirmed, but season 3 was renewed basically when this season started. So it's a priority for HBO. We know that much.
Jeremy Strong, man. Great season for him too. He'll definitely be getting an Emmy nomination for sure. So, well, we move on to a show that is no longer up for the Emmys, although this episode might be, or this movie might be. El Camino, Breaking
Right.
Bad, Vince Gilligan. Man, uh, I was really excited to watch El Camino because I missed the Breaking Bad world, and Better Call Saul is just fantastic, and
Yeah.
I can't wait till that
Still
comes
somehow
back as well.
underrated.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that Bob Odenkirk hasn't like won multiple Emmys at this point is always going to be like baffling. And Breaking Bad, I think, also a show that how many did it win? Did it win one, two best drama awards? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, it won a few. Cranston won several Best
Yeah,
Actors. I know that much.
so Breaking Bad critically, I think got its due. Saul, I don't know why, but El Camino, I was excited to be back, and I thought El Camino was pretty good. There's a lot here to like, but I just kind of left being like, do we need this? Do we need to know what happened with Jesse next? And Gilligan himself has said in interviews, no, this is unnecessary. But if this is something that Netflix is going to throw money at and going to give Gilligan the right to make, I think it's a great thing to have, because this is still a really, really quality long episode of television movie, however you want to put it. How did you feel about seeing Jesse Pinkman back in the fold?
Yeah, it's been 6 years since Breaking Bad ended, and that end, last that we see of Jesse is him, speeding away from the compound, screaming, and it's this really fitting like coda to the utter shit that Jesse was going through for the past like season and a half. And I mean, the finale, the last season of Breaking Bad, it's universally acclaimed, but I really thought that was a really effective way to end Jesse's story. And the thing about this movie being unnecessary, I mean, obviously it's unnecessary because the ending we got was already really great and virtually flawless. The thing that I just kind of am disappointed in is that we're just kind of seeing Jesse escape more, right? And like, I just kind of assumed, Jesse got away. Cool. And now I know for sure Jesse got away. Like, I don't know if I really, nothing was added to Jesse's story, Jesse's arc, how we think about Jesse. Nothing was taken away. Nothing was hurt either. So I just think it's ultimately just kind of middling as far as the Breaking Bad high standard that Gilligan has established goes. But yeah, I guess I was just kind of hoping it would just be something a little greater than it was, But what we got, as you said, is still really solid. And I love seeing Jesse Plemons. Todd is kind of the ultimate evil in a certain sense, and just seeing more of him is really great. But I mean, what do you think of the flashbacks in this? Because I mean, Todd is in the biggest flashbacks, a lot of Todd, but we also see Cranston, we also see Banks, we also see Kristen Ritter. I mean, I just don't know if they added anything beyond just being the utter fan service that this movie is.
Yeah, that's kind of just what I felt like it was, like fan service and the reminders of these relationships, and a lot of them came back to Jesse discovering something about himself, thinking about maybe what could have been. In the scene with Walt, he's encouraging Jesse to go to college, to get a business degree, to have something to fall back on so he doesn't have to follow this life. And in the scene with Kristen Ritter, I'm forgetting what her name was on the show, Jane, I believe.
Jane.
Yeah, with Jane, she's talking about this like mindset and this theory on life, and Jesse's saying it's so cool that you just kind of like go with the flow, and she's like, no, like that's not what it should be. Like, you need to like make something of your life. You need to like move forward and like try to take things that are important to you. And it's all just like these memories that Jesse has of like times when things could have gone different, or he could have approached things in his life differently. And I thought it was interesting because I think it builds out a bit of the dilemma Jesse's in throughout this, is like, how the hell did I get to this point where I'm washing months of dirt and grime off my body and having flashbacks to being hosed down by Nazis in a cage. And yeah, I don't know. As I sit with it more, and I've talked to a couple of people about it, I'm kind of left just more like, yeah, I really enjoy seeing Jesse Pinkman more, and like I'm not going to complain about more time in this world, but I also think just that last scene of Jesse where he's just like breaking out, tears in his eyes, like driving the El Camino, like busting through the gate, is such like a perfect like period on that character that this just kind of felt like it was unnecessary. And especially like that shootout with the welder. I was like, where the hell did that come from? Like the Wild West.
A little hokey.
Did you notice that the welder and the stuntman in Gemstones the same guy?
I did not until someone pointed that out to me.
Yeah,
that's cool. Good run for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because that shootout with Jesse shooting him with the second gun in his pocket, that's like very Breaking Bad, right? Like that kind of kill, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's classic stuff. But because this is a movie, 2-hour movie, it's kind of like a few truncated episodes of the show, and we skip around more because it's a movie. Breaking Bad and Saw, for that matter, Gilligan made his bones for being so diligent and detail oriented with damn near everything he did, both from a technical perspective, but also just from a plotting perspective. Some people might see that as a problem with Saw, for example. At least some of the early Saw stuff was quite slow, perhaps monotonous, depending on if it's for you or not. But this time around, Jesse just kind of jumps around a lot, right? In El Camino, we kind of move from point to point pretty fast, and like sneaking into his mom and dad's house, then leaving the house. A lot of the process that you expect to see shown to you is just passed over this time around. And I'm not sure if that's a problem, given that it is a movie and movies need to work differently, but it's a little different from what we expect from the way Gilligan tells stories in this world. That being said, I really like seeing Robert Forster. To be honest, I totally did not remember he was even in Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
He's in that one episode, Granite State, the penultimate. And of course, he passed away, announced he passed away the day El Camino came out. But I thought he was tremendous, and he was also tremendous in Twin Peaks: Return 2 years ago. So that was awesome to see. And, we also get a lot of other guys. Like the tow truck dude comes back. Obviously, Badger and Skinny Pete are here. Huel isn't actually in El Camino, but he's in the teaser. So we know Huel actually does get out of the
the room,
safe house or wherever he was, locked up in the end.
Room.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other stuff. We find out that Lydia does in fact die from the ricin poisoning. Like cool comment, I suppose. But yeah, I think the sense that nothing truly was added, and that ultimately I think it just comes down to what kind of fan you are. Are you happy just to spend any more time in the world because there's a high floor when it comes to Gilligan telling stories that you're just okay with that? If that's enough for you, then I'm sure El Camino was really satisfying. But because it was I don't know, I just wish it was a little more consequential, given the secrecy of it, given the marketing, and like honestly, like seeing Walt and Jesse again at that diner scene, which probably we assume takes place like the season 2 range, maybe season 3, given where they are as characters. I mean, we get a bitch, awesome, but like, I don't know, like did that convo add anything? I don't know if it did. It was just kind of showy seeing Walt again, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it added something in terms of, I think it actually shows a little bit more complication of the dynamic, because by season 5, Walt has gone pretty much full heel, and especially if you watch like the recap prior to the movie, it actually shows the scene where Walt's like, give me one more, like, get Pinkman, and like how he pretty much like sentences Jesse to the torture that he endures. And I think to kind of shine back on that, there was a point where Walt wasn't pure evil with this, that he actually had some genuine regard for Jesse and
Right.
wanted to see him do better. I think does remind you of how far things had come, and it just adds a little bit of depth. But I think overall what you described is just the basic problem with this. Is it's like, was any of this necessary? Did any of this really add that much? I don't think it did, but it's also just like, okay, yeah, spend 2 more hours with Jesse Pinkman, got to see Mike and Walt, and it's still, it's like I think we say this a lot with things that we think are really quality, but it's still better than most of the other things that are out there. And it's like pizza. Breaking Bad is pizza. It's still good even when it's bad. So
right,
can't knock it too much. Any last thoughts?
Really stoked for Better Call Saul's return next year.
Last season of that too, I believe, right?
They haven't said that, but I think there's probably maybe 2 left at max. That being said, I'm pretty sure this is the last time we see Aaron Paul as Pinkman. I think if they were to go back and show him doing shit in Alaska, I just don't know how you connect that to the larger Breaking Bad world. And by having El Camino take place in Albuquerque and involve all the characters that were still around again and feel like a continuation of the show in a true sense, it doesn't seem like they were interested in truly like uplifting the status quo we came to know. So I don't think they would ever go back and do it, and it wouldn't make sense to see Pinkman in the black and white Saul future scenes at the Cinnabon with Jimmy. I don't know if that's realistic either. So this is probably the last of it.
Yeah.
And we'll have to settle for Aaron Paul on Westworld.
And also on BoJack, if you
final season of that.
Yeah. That's gonna wrap it up for this week. What do we got next week, Dave?
Watchmen season premiere on HBO. Reviews are strong. Not quite as strong as Parasite's reviews. New movie from Bong Joon-ho. Super excited for that. The Lighthouse is out. Zombieland 2, Maleficent. Lots of movies for you. So pick what you want, obviously. The Laundromat. Steven Soderbergh, Meryl Streep, Antonio Banderas. That is on Netflix after being in a few theaters that come Friday. And also new music from Cash Doll and Clipping. So plenty of shit to talk about, my friend.
Hell yeah. And hit that subscribe button and go to soundcloud.com/nowstalgiapod to follow us and catch all of our takes on that. And again, Nowstalgiapod on Twitter. We'll catch you next week.